Hello, welcome to my channel.
I
Subscribe.
used to think betrayal would announce itself, that it would slam a door or leave a lipstick stain somewhere obvious. In reality, it's quieter. It lives in the way someone silences their phone, in the way they laugh at a text with their face turned slightly away, slaves in the pause before an answer. The first pause came on a Wednesday. Laura was stirring sauce at the stove, the spoon clinking the pot in that lazy after-work rhythm. Her phone buzzed, face down on the counter. She glanced at me, then reached for a dish towel instead, as if an imaginary mess required her full attention. Buzz, buzz. She didn't move. She asked me about my day, with a voice that sounded like it had driven in from somewhere else. We'd been married long enough for me to know her real voice. I told her my day was good and watched the muscles along her jaw. That's where truth lives, if you know where to look. A week later, I found the second clue. A delicate gold bracelet under the passenger seat of her car. Not mine to give, not hers to own. When I asked, she laughed too loudly and said it belonged to a coworker she'd given a ride to after a birthday dinner. She put it on the console and said, "I'll bring it to her tomorrow." Like that made the story official. The bracelet stayed there for 3 days. I told myself not to be dramatic. People keep secrets that have nothing to do with infidelity. People also cheat. The problem is that both statements are true at once, and you have to choose which one you're going to live in. 2 Fridays later. She said she was driving to her sister's after work to help paint a nursery. Our niece is 3. There is no nursery. I nodded anyway and kissed her at the door, and when the taillights disappeared, I sat at the kitchen table with my hands flat on the wood and listened to the house. The refrigerator hummed like an old man clearing his throat. The clock ticked like a nervous habit. I got up, went to the garage, and opened the toolbox to the drawer that holds things you hope you never need. The tracker was smaller than I expected. A black magnet with a SIM and a battery and the promise of certainty. I slid under the SUV with a flashlight and clipped it to the frame near the rear wheel well. The app showed a gray dot where our driveway lives on the map. I watched it for a minute and felt a kind of shame I hadn't felt since high school. Like I cheated on a test even though the test had been rigged. The dot left at 6:11 p.m. and took a route that didn't exist on the map of my marriage. West, not north. An exit by the river, past the storage units, into a development of new townhomes, with porches that look identical until you notice the plants. The dot stopped in front of Building B, zoomed in and read the number. The app stamped at the time. 6:42 p.m. I didn't drive there that night. Instead, I called her at 9. She answered on the second ring, breathless, laughter in the background. "Hey, Suriyama's painting the ceiling, and we made a mess." "Okay," I said. "Put her on," and Laura hesitated, then said, "She's in the shower." I told her good night and hung up before I could say something I'd regret. Then I texted, "Emma, how's the ceiling?" She replied, "On my apartment. It's off-white perfection. You okay?" My chest felt like it had a lock I couldn't find the key for. The next morning, drove by Building B and parked half a block away. The townhomes were tidy, new grass, trying to believe in itself. Unit 3B had a doormat that said, "Welcome in." Font, too cheerful to be a warning. Man I recognized from Laura's stories. Michael, college friend with the eternally funny takes, came out with a grocery bag that had a bottleneck sticking out. He wore a baseball cap like camouflage, in the satisfied posture of someone who knows they've been getting away with something. He got into a car with plates from our county. I took 3 photos and felt my hands not tremble, which scared me more than if they had. I didn't confront Laura. Instead, I went to work and moved quietly. I updated the beneficiaries on things that mattered. I opened a new account where my pay would land, and not in a dramatic wage, just a gentle redirect, like a stream finding a new bed. I pulled records from our shared cloud and backed them up the responsible way. The way a person does when a storm is coming and you want the insurance people to believe you were careful. The dot returned to 3B. 3 times over 2 weeks. A Wednesday. Lunch that lasted too long to be a sandwich. A Sunday afternoon she described as errands. A Thursday she claimed was book club. Book clubs do not happen in neighborhoods with only 2 cars in each driveway and no lights on except the one you care about. I kept waiting for the moment when I'd lose control, when I'd drive there, bang on the door, shout, throw, implode. It never came. What came instead was a plan so practical, it made me wonder if there had always been a part of me good at revenge, and I had simply never fed it. The plan needed time. And the best time came gift-trapped. A 3-day work trip to a supplier we use every quarter. I usually fly out Tuesday morning and back Thursday night. Laura knows the schedule. She's the one who packs me the snacks. The day before I was supposed to leave, I canceled the hotel and changed my flight to a later one I didn't intend to take. Then I bought 2 cameras that look like charging bricks and 2 that look like air fresheners. The box promised discreet and high definition in clean Helvetica. I hate that I know the font now. At midnight, while Laura slept with her back to me like a person facing a different future, I slid 1 brick under the television stand in the living room, 1 on the bedroom dresser angled toward the door, 1 air freshener on the bookshelf, and 1 in the kitchen above the sink. They were motion activated, and the app spoke to me like a patient nurse. Tuesday morning, I kissed Laura and waved from the rideshare, then asked the driver to drop me 3 blocks away. I walked home by the alley and let myself in through the garage, then took my car and parked it behind the old hardware store where people forget to notice the obvious. I spent the day at a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and a bathroom that smelled like lemons, watching my phone not move. At 6:09 p.m., it buzzed. Motion in the kitchen. The video opened to Laura in the doorway, hair down, a bottle of red in one hand, and a paper bag in the other. She set the bag on the counter and texted someone, then straightened the tea. Towels like stage dressing. He arrived at 6:26, tall, confident, wearing a shirt I recognized from a photo Laura once showed me of their college group at a reunion. He didn't ring. He tapped the glass with the practiced cadence of a man who has tapped that glass before. She opened. They hugged. He kissed her forehead like they'd agreed to pretend it was tender. They murmured in a language I used to know. The feed showed my kitchen being used in ways it had never been. He reached behind a sugar jar for the bottle opener because of course he knew where it was. She handed him a glass I usually reserve for holidays. He cooked like a guest who wants to prove he belongs. They ate the kind of meal we always said we didn't have time for. They laughed, clean and bright, the way we hadn't in months, and I felt both sick and relieved to see joy existed in the house, even if it didn't choose me. They migrated to the living room and then, as all gravity does, to the bedroom. The camera there didn't see what a lawyer would call explicit. It saw clothes on the chair. It saw the way footsteps sound on hardwood when 2 people aren't careful. It saw the light go off at 11:03 and back on at 11:04 and off again at 11:20. In that rhythm, you don't need to be a poet to understand. I could have burst in then. The film of it ran behind my eyes, a door thrown open, a light like a confession, a line that lives in bad movies but sometimes needs to be said anyway. Instead, I waited. I wanted morning light for what came next. Morning light carries a different kind of truth. It shows dust in the air. It makes people look exactly like themselves. At 3:17 a.m., they slept. It's the slow rise and fall of shoulders, the noise of a home settling, a muted siren blocks away. I drove home, parked 2 doors down, and walked softly. The way you do when a baby is sleeping and you don't want to wake the version of your life you still want to keep. I unlocked the door and went straight to the kitchen. The wine glasses were on the counter, red footprints at the bottom, like evidence of a ritual. I filmed them, the shoes by the door, his and hers. I filmed those, the belt on the back of the bed, chair, the shirt half inside on the hall table. The bedroom door closed, but not latched. I pushed it open. The camera flash lit the room white. They woke in the middle of their guilt, like swimmers breaking the surface. Laura grabbed the sheet. Michael rolled to sitting, eyes bleary, mouth forming a curse. "What the?" he started, then stopped, because there are only so many ways to narrate the obvious. "Don't stand up," I said, because I didn't want to have to hit him, and I wasn't sure I'd be able not to. "Look at the camera." He did. Laura said my name like she could shrink its syllables into something. "Cute again. This is the last night you sleep in this house," I told her. To him, "You have 3 minutes to get out. You are still here at 3:04. The police can help you explain to my neighbors why you're trespassing." He started to bluster. I lifted my phone and tapped the screen so the little red recording dot blinked. He grabbed his clothes and moved like a man who has suddenly discovered he's not a protagonist. Laura cried, "Okay?" The breathless AAA of someone who has practiced sobbing alone. "We can talk," she said. "Please, okay?" "Explain," I said. "You already did," and nodded toward the cameras. I gave her 30 minutes to dress and pack a bag. While she did, I went to the garage and pulled out a roll of contractor bags and a Sharpie. I labeled them with a steadiness I didn't feel. Work clothes, shoes, bathroom, keepsakes in the living room. I unplugged the lamp we bought at the flea market, our first spring in this house, and felt my throat tighten for the first time that night. Grief is stupid. "Okay." It chooses objects at random. At dawn, I set her bags on the lawn. I left a folder on the hall table with a list of what was inside each one, because even angry men should be decent. On top of the folder, I placed an envelope with a clean copy of the prenup I'd found in a file drawer the week before, the one we'd signed before we had anything worth dividing. The one that suddenly felt like a seatbelt I didn't know I was wearing. At 7, I drove to my lawyer's office and signed papers I never thought I'd need. By 9, I was back at the house, changing the code on the door and the password on the Wi-Fi. At 10, I uploaded a compiled video to a private link and sent it to 6 people: her parents, her sister, 2 mutual friends who would hear the truth. Somewhere, and I wanted that somewhere to be me, in Michael's HR department, which I found through a directory and an email that still used the company's first name from before they rebranded. The subject line said, "For awareness." The body said nothing, because the video said enough. By noon, my phone was a machine that makes noise. Her mother, "Come to lunch and talk like adults." Her sister, "I'm so angry at her." And, "Sad for you. One friend, I'm here." The other, "We suspected. I'm sorry, HR. We have received your message." Michael, a number I didn't recognize that left a voicemail, shaped like a threat until it remembered recording devices exist and turned into a polite request for a conversation. It's Laura. 27 texts in which I was both the love of her life and an unfeeling monster. I turned the notifications off and made a sandwich, because hunger does not care about drama. The neighbors watched from behind curtains, because that is what neighborhoods do. A woman 2 houses down brought me a casserole in a dish with her name taped to the bottom. I thanked her and didn't cry until she left, because being handed a warm thing when your house feels cold will break a person in a good way. The days after felt like the aftermath of a storm. Everywhere, little branches down. I moved room to room and picked up. I returned hotel-sized shampoos to a bag, recycled empty bottles, mopped footprints I wished I didn't know. And in the doing of those small chores, I took the house back from whatever ghost had tried to replace me. Laura moved in with a friend across town. She sent an email formally requesting to discuss reconciliation. My lawyer replied with language that sounds like steel. Michael changed his relationship status to taking a break from social media, which is what men do online when the offline world has stopped finding them charming. I did not post anything. I did not write a thread. If there's one thing I learned in all of this, it's that the truth does its best work quietly. You put it where it needs to go and leave it alone. You don't need a chorus if the song is real. A week later, I stood in the bedroom doorway with a paint chip in my hand, a gray Cold Harbor that looked steady under morning light. I rolled it on one wall and then the next. The room changed in front of me, like a bruise fading. I bought a new duvet because sometimes you need symbolic gestures, and because it was on sale. I fixed a squeak in the floorboard by the closet by sinking a screw into a joist the original builders missed. The silence afterward felt like a blessing. People asked what the revenge was. Was it the video? The lawn? The email to HR? Yes, in part. But the real revenge was steadiness. It was refusing to scream when screaming would have made me feel powerful, but made me weaker in the long run. It was letting consequences find the people who had earned them, sleeping through the night again in a room that looked like mine. There's a moment I keep though, the flash of the camera in the dark, the shock in their eyes, the way time split in two before and after, and I had my hand on the switch. I don't revisit it to hurt myself, revisit it to remind myself. I didn't imagine this. I did the hardest thing a person can do. I chose the truth. And then I chose to live with it. On the first quiet Sunday, after the papers were filed, I made coffee and took it to the porch. The street was ordinary, the kind of ordinary you forget to be grateful for. A neighbor waved. Somewhere down the block, a kid laughed at a joke I hope never gets old. I sat there until my coffee went cold and my heart felt warm again. And I thought, this is what the end of a story looks like when the person telling it refuses to turn it into a spectacle. This is the beginning, too.